The Turbo Velo Tuesday Night Crit in Richardson, Texas. The Masters 40 Plus Series 4 Race 1. We didn't race last week because of inclement weather, rain, but we did race this week, obviously, despite a different kind of inclement weather, which was intense heat, intense humidity, temperatures in the mid-90s at the time of this race, with a heat index, I think, well above 105, 110, something like that. This is the very first really hot race of the crit season here in Richardson, Texas, which is the suburb just north of Dallas, Texas. I just yelled up, up, up because Patrick Breen moved up on the left side. He started in the back. He's one of the hitters in this race, one of the Masters racers that's just really at a different level. And there is also another racer in our field tonight that's at a different level, Matt Stevens, who is perhaps best known for winning Unbound in the past, when it was called Dirty Kanza. And his wife is a professional cyclist who races in Europe. So those two guys, different level. If we're lucky and fortunate in this race, we'll have one of our riders join them in what is presumed probably going to be a breakaway between Breen and Stevens. And both those guys are a little bit more of your very high FTP, really go fast. They're not really your want to have everyone finish in a bunch sprint guys. So they're definitely going to be looking for the breakaway. And a really simple, easy strategy is to join them in a breakaway, and you've at least got third if you can stay in the break. But things are a little bit different for us tonight, because one of our riders decided to donate blood. Donated a double shot of blood a couple days before the race, and kudos to him for thinking about the health of other people, doing that selflessly. But it's really not great for your athletic performance. So one of our hitters on our team, who theoretically has used this strategy before getting in that kind of breakaway, that was not in the cards today. I was so far in the back, starting in the back, zero warm-up, literally zero warm-up, just roll my bike to the start. I was late leaving home. Then there was a car accident on the roads on the way to the crit, and I was a little bit panicked in terms of getting ready and getting on the road. No warm-up, legs are not feeling great, it's really hot, I've got a nice sock on my back. Literally gone in 5 minutes, just completely melted. I've got 2 bottles for this race. The first at the gun, Matt Stevens goes off fast. My teammate Ryan jumps in. And that didn't last and came back. And eventually here, we're going to see Stevens and Breen take off in a breakaway. I don't think they're on the break yet. But eventually they will be a 2-man breakaway. And it's going to be the rest of us plotting for third place. I think one discussion we can make about the tactics of this particular race is, forget first and second. That's already done and dusted. Although, I think I do see them ahead. They're already a 2-person breakaway. They just passed the bathroom that we're about to pass in just a few moments. So they're considerably far ahead right now. But I didn't think they were too far ahead that they couldn't be caught if there was an a real all-in effort by the field, including a real all-in effort by our team. After the race was over, I asked our our team captain, Ryan, if we perhaps should have chased them, and he said no. He said that if we had gone all out, cashed in all our chips, we could have potentially brought them back, at least for a little bit, but that would not have been a wise use of our resources, and probably wouldn't have led to any difference in terms of those two getting away later, for example. But it was just in the back of my mind whether we should do that. Anyway, so that's done and dusted. No more talking about them. They finished 1-2, and the rest of us are racing for the scraps, third place on the podium, as well as points that accumulate in the series here. Adam here in front of me, teammate on the red bike with the white striped jersey. He was pulling on the front about half a lap ago, half mile ago, and now is not pulling on the front. So again, he may have been trying to keep that two-man breakaway a little bit close, but that effort has, I think, primarily been abandoned from here. We have our regular contingent of Masters riders, plus a new person on our team that's, I think, racing the Masters for the first time, and he's Nagi, and so you don't have to be a former national champion like Adam in front of me to be on this team. But Nagi just kind of finding his way as a new racer and racing the Cat 4 races as in the C crit, the very first crit, the 4-5 crit that happens as the first crit of the day. In terms of strategy here, so one thing to keep in mind here is the wind was unusual. We're headed south right now in this leg of the course, and the wind is left to right. It is a very strong crosswind. Usually this will be a headwind. And as we turn left here, we are going into a headwind where you really felt like even in the draft, there was no draft, or very little draft. It was hard to find a spot where you felt like there was a significant draft. So this is an unusual wind, and this will play into what happens in the race, especially in terms of what people on the front are doing in that prior leg from turn 1 to turn 2, where we have that strong crosswind in terms of guttering or not guttering. And as we see groups separate on the road, we're going to have to think about what our strategy is in terms of who's ahead of us as teammates in the groups, and do we like the composition of the group, and what do we do about that. So we see a move up here with Cadence. Cadence are in these black and white and neon yellowish green kits, and we see that there's a teammate as well. Adam is in this breakaway here, and my teammate just in front of me, Andy, in the blue and yellow striped kit, he is on the front and I am on the front too, and we want to let this go, but we are being attentive to counter anyone that's trying to bridge up to these two. So these two people in the front of the road, in the front of the road here, are they are third and fourth on the road. Joel taking up the chase. Why is he doing this? He doesn't want the gap to grow too big. Presumably he thinks that Adam has the advantage in that matchup of the two riders ahead, and this is not a favorable matchup for Cadence. So Cadence, of course, you know, Breen and Matt Stevens, they are not on Cadence, then they're not on our team, so they're on their own individual teams. Cadence does not like the composition, or at least Joel doesn't. Andy goes to the front, and he gets to the left. So he is not guttering the group. If you're guttering the group, you'll be all the way on the right based on the wind. He is now sheltering the group, and you can see we don't even have to really pedal as we are going quite slow, and this is a kind of strategic moment in the race where people are deciding how to expend their energy. Certainly someone could try to bridge right now and attack and bridge up, but people have to decide whether that's worth their energy and what utility that will have. If you have ever pulled the whole group up to a breakaway and not realized that you're pulling the whole group, it is kind of a disappointing moment. You're like, why did I do all that work to pull the breakaway up and I burned matches for no purpose, no real, strong strategic purpose. So a rider that's on his own team puts in a dig to try to bridge up. Strategic decision on the part of us behind, we're like, we'll let that go. I'm not really familiar with that rider. I don't know how strong he is. I don't know if he's a threat to podium out of those three, get to beat the other two in the break, if the break is successful. So we let that go. But Carlos here, who doesn't have a teammate, I believe, in the ride, on the Tenzing team, decides that it's worth putting in a move here as things start to go away. If you just sit and wait too long, those two guys up front, the representing third and fourth, will be gone forever. And someone's got to expend some energy if they want to fight for the podium at some point in this race. This is a relatively short Masters race, about 35 minutes or so. So It's fast and furious in terms of putting in energy. Everyone's hot and so forth. Now, I was talking with Ryan after the race and Nagi, and one comment I made to Nagi is that there are only a few people in this race that actually have the chance to win. Carlos saying, hey, I did a little bit of work in this tailwind. Is this Carlos? I think it's Carlos. I apologize if this is not Carlos or Carlos's teammate. As far as strategy, there are only a few people who can win the race. And given that I've already told you the front two, Patrick and Matt Stevens, they win. Breen first, Stevens second. They obviously have a chance to win the race because of their very strong FTP and power, speed, and ability to just ride away from everyone to win solo. So there are when you think about it, there are three ways to win a crit. One way is to win in a bunch sprint, and usually that means you have a very good sprint and possibly also a good team, but you don't necessarily have to have a good team. You are a good sprinter with good tactics, good positioning, etc. Sprint to the win. Not everybody can do that. Some people will never be able to do that. Another way to win is to get in a breakaway and win from the breakaway, from a reduced group, i.e. a reduced group sprint. You somehow get in a break and you eventually win from that break. You could win in a final sprint from the break, or you could win by attacking earlier and winning solo. And so that's the third way to win, by going up the road and winning solo. That could be an early attack, a late attack, that could be attack from the field, that could be an attack from a breakaway. Some people, that's the only way they can win. They won't outsprint people, but they can go long. And so this gets to your strategy of what are my tactics and what is my pathway to victory. For some people, honestly, there is no pathway, and there will never be a pathway. That's just the way it is. How many times have you been watching the Tour de France and they say, this guy's been a pro for 10 years and he's never won a race, and he just won a race, or he didn't win the race. But it's pretty common. You hear that all the time because they don't have a pathway to win based on their peers. And also, in many cases, their role is not to go for the win. But even if their role was to go for the win, many of them could not win because they don't have a pathway to win. Their job is to pave the way for the teammate that has the pathway to win. And that support role is really important. So if you're getting into crits and you want to win, you have to think about, what is my pathway to win and how can I maximize that path? What kind of training can I do to do that? Now, if you figured out a way to win, there may be a little bit of target fixation where you think, that is my only way to win, thus I will only focus on that pathway. And that could be a mistake. Remember, this is for fun. We're not professionals. And, for example, if you're a good sprinter, but you never get in a breakaway or attempt to get in a breakaway or form a breakaway, that's kind of boring. Maybe you can get in a breakaway. If you never attack solo, why not? Give it a try. It took me a long time to ever be in a successful breakaway. That was a long time goal of mine. Can I get in a breakaway? It's not as easy as you think. It's hard. When they talk in the Tour de France, if you're watching that coverage, it's like, oh, we had to work so hard to get in the breakaway. Most of the time back in the old days, you'd start the coverage, the breakaway had already formed, and you're like, oh, okay, there's a breakaway and there's a group behind. But now with this longer coverage that they do, where they kind of cover the whole stage, or they really do cover the formation of the breakaway, you can see how difficult and all in you have to be. So we got some movement up the road. I think Brent, right in front of me on cadence, is going to go at some point. I know he goes, but let's just watch and see when he goes and how he goes and so forth. One of the keys of bridging to a breakaway is figuring out if you want to drag anyone with you, take anyone with you, and if you don't want to take anyone with you, what's the best way to not do that? So one way to take people with you is to go from the front. It's easy to latch on to people relatively when they go from the front, although we saw my teammate Andy just go from the front, and he actually got a pretty good jump where no one was immediately on his wheel. We see that Brent just left and jumped on his wheel, so kind of like favorites on both teams here. Strong riders on both teams in terms of cadence, and my team, Cheney, Windows, and Door. Andy just won the last series and placed essentially very high in each race and won one of them, I believe, but had 3 or 4 podiums in the 4-race series. We see another 3 guys go, and now I am on the front. Remember that if I go to the right, I am guttering the group. If I go to the left, I am not guttering the group. And I'm on the front sort of patrolling, like it's a false tempo. Teammate there, Jorge, just attacks. Now, one thing we know, he didn't take anyone with him. He went from the back, he went very hard, he accelerated, and it's very hard if you're on the front to jump onto that. Eddie is now pulling on the right, but he's in the gutter. If you get into the gutter to pull, that means that you are trying to move forward without letting other people rest, which can be a very good tactic, but in other times it is not a preferred tactic. We see a couple of groups up the road here, and we're watching to see if they're going to coalesce. This is my teammate Ryan in the blue and yellow long sleeve skin suit just ahead of me. And what I think you're going to see in this race here is folks thinking about, should I try to bridge up? It's not all that far. They are within touching distance. Right now we're going to a headwind, so some folks are going to say, I don't want to attack in the headwind. I will wait until I'm out of the headwind. That, whether that's a good strategy or not, people have to decide for themselves. Now, going back to the pathways for victory, you don't have to have a pathway to victory to have fun in cycling, to be a contributor. RG from Cadence going on the right. And so we kind of see these folks peeling off, and each one of us having to make decisions about whether we're going to pull that back and whether we like the composition of what's going on ahead. At some point, there will become some consternation about, if we're back here, is there any chance of winning? Or are you out of the race if you're back here? Do you have to go to be, quote unquote, in the race? Are we really the field, or are we dropped? As things start to develop, I think that question becomes more prominent. We have a tailwind in this portion of the race, and we are now going to be turning into the very strong crosswind. The rider on the front is on the left, therefore giving shelter to all the riders that can ride in this echelon and get a little bit of reprieve from the very strong wind. Teammate Ryan attacking from the front, going very hard. The Cadence rider who follows him is not immediately in his draft, and the rest of us just staying. So we have the 2 major teams that are fighting for third, Cadence, and my team, our team, Cheney. We are represented in the breakaway ahead. And in my case, let's see, Jorge has gone up the road, Andy's gone up the road, Ryan has just gone up the road. Adam is up the road. Me and Nagi are the only ones not up the road in terms of Cheney. However, I may still have a role to play. Right now, that means we're well represented in the break ahead. And of course, I am satisfied with the composition of the break. Since we have stacked the break, there is no need for me to do anything that would bring this group behind up to that break. In other words, I don't want to bring 7 people up to the break that we've already stacked. That would not be in our favor. However, if I were... Now, this guy here, Clint, on Pegasus, who just went by, he's been on the podium a few times recently. A couple times in this race. I think he ended up with 2nd in the series. And I made the comment to Cadence rider Sam next to me. I said, was that the winning move in terms of getting 3rd place? I had some concerns there. I've not been involved in the sprint really at all this season based on my role in the lead out, but I know he's fared well in sprint, so I really don't want a sprinter from another team going up into the breakaway. That's a potentially dangerous situation for us in terms of something we don't want. Brent is a good sprinter, so that's another situation in general we would not want. We don't want a good sprinter to be in the breakaway from another team. And but I made the decision. You know, it wouldn't have been easy to jump on his wheel. He attacked with sufficient speed that it would have been hard to jump on his wheel, which is to his credit. Now Eddie's pulling here. He's riding solo in terms of his team United in this race, so he doesn't have any teammates to work for, and he must represent his own interests. Now he is riding on the very edge on the right side, which means he is guttering the group. In other words, he is providing absolutely no draft for me and anyone else. So everyone who's behind me and him, we're not getting any draft. I'm not getting as close to him as the edge because it's dangerous. You know, if you just mess up, you might end up in those barriers in the grass. And so it kind of depends on what your goals here. You know, for Eddie, if your goal is to make everyone work hard and do the same amount of work that you had to do on that hard pull, yeah, right in the gutter. If your goal is to have a cohesive group that's going to work together and chase the group ahead and reconnect and reshuffle, that's not the right move because everyone is now tired because they had to work just as hard as you to stay on. And there was some attrition that happened behind. I don't have a rear camera, but people were falling off the back in terms of the heat and things. I believe this is, again, I might have names wrong, but I think this is Marcus, only a member of his team. And again, he has to represent his interests and decide how much work he wants to put on the frontier so that we may or may not catch the group ahead. Because at this point, that's a big group. It was a little bit later that I looked back to see how big our group is. The group ahead is probably bigger than our group. So this is what can happen in these crits when you realize, you know, this is not necessarily the situation right at this moment. But when you're like, all the strongest guys are in the group ahead, we are not probably going to win from behind. That's a consideration. You know, you think, then you're off the back. You may be the field technically, but you are off the back. There is nothing that's going to happen, and you might as well just soft pedal in. Looks like we're picking up a guy here. So I have no incentive at this point to work, and I'm not going to work. My strategy at this point is all in on the idea that perhaps enough guys in this group will work hard, turn themselves inside out, catch up to the break ahead, and I'll have rested the entire time, and I will be the designated person to sprint and win in that case. Meaning that perhaps the guys in the break had to work harder, but I didn't have to work hard. The guys in my group have worked hard to pull the group back, but I've done no work. I'm relatively more rested, and perhaps I can win in that scenario. So that's the scenario to hold on to. Sure doesn't seem like it's a very likely scenario. We see the break ahead turning to the left. We're in the crosswinds right now. Marcus is mostly on the right side, but there's enough space for 2, 3, 4 riders to get a draft. Everyone else is going to be guttered. It's giving us some space, so I'm definitely getting rest, as much rest as a person can get on a second wheel in an echelon, which is definitely something, but maybe not quite as much as third or fourth wheel, depending on how wide it is. Okay, so why is Cadence doing an effort here? Not exactly apparent to me, but I do know from prior experience this particular writer is a strong believer in the false tempo tactic, which is even if you have a guy in head, keep the pace up high enough that people are discouraged from attacking. And that's a real tactic. It's sometimes a good tactic and sometimes not. Because that means, you could argue get someone on the other team to do that work on the front. And if they want to go slow, let them go slow. We don't need to, keep the pace up high to do a false tempo and wear them out. But it is a legitimate strategy. It's just, I think, harder to judge sometimes. Nick Lopez, I think that's RG. Nick Lopez jersey. Eddie on the front again. These are the guys that don't have teammates that are in the back. They don't have anyone represented in the break ahead. Is that 3 laps to go? Did I say 3 laps? How far are we into this? Yeah. And they are the ones who are most motivated to bring this group back. So, as you can see, I'm staying near the front, but not pulling or doing any work. It's hard to know exactly how hard the brake is going. It's a really hot day. People's bodies reacted strangely, I think. Here's a teammate who was in the brake who is now falling off, Jorge, which is not ideal, but sometimes that happens. Now Eddie is wanting other people to do work, but he is riding on the far right side, meaning he is guttering the group, and nobody is getting any rest from him doing this pull. We're all having to do about the same amount of work as him, so as exhausted as he is when he's done with his pull, we have a similar exhaustion, and there is low motivation for the group to work together when someone's guttering the group. So that's just a tip. If you want people to pull, you got to give them some space to rest so they can come around. But if you want to attack and wear them out and drop them, yes, guttering is good and should be done. Sam and I have a similar tactic here. Sam is the cadence rider in front of me with the GoPro on his rear, on the rear of his saddle. He presumably will post a picture, his own video of the race. You can look that up under the YouTube channel Sam Find Later, just the words Find Later. And that's his name, and you can look up the video with rear view and front view. Sam taught me everything I know technically about how to do videos and overlays with his technique. And he's taught me a lot about riding bikes too. So we have a similar tactic in that we are both trying to control this field, this small field, the non-breakaway. And at this point, we're probably a little more invested with not much time left in the race to not let guys leave. We have to keep on because remember, our strategy is to win from this group if this group does enough work to, when I say win, I mean get third place. If they do enough work to bring the group ahead back. Let's look at the, was that 2? Couldn't quite see it. There's not much left in terms of time, but you can see a little more urgency from the guy's head. And I've fallen back a little bit. It's not really ideal to be second wheel if you're monitoring the group because you can get attacked from behind. And you're also doing more work. However, if people are guttering, there's a little bit more chance of getting some draft as a second wheel. Again, guys in the front guttering, we're all just on the edge of that concrete, and none of us are really getting any break, having to put in a lot of power relative to what it could have been if the person on the front is on the left, which again is a valid, good tactic to wear out the people, but not a great tactic for working together to catch the group ahead. See, they're not that far ahead. They made that turn, and they're going off to the left. They're not, with a concerted effort, we could potentially catch them. Eddie waves his hand over to the right, like, come on guys, let's go. And I think this is the last lap, if I'm not mistaken here. So, yeah, Wilson on the front, again, independent, no teammates. It's now or never for him. Who's going to do the work to catch the breakaway ahead? But this is not ideal for him to be pulling us all along. I wonder if I should have attacked this group earlier and bridged up ahead. But the tactic here, like, you know, it's not that far, this group. I think if I had gone a little earlier, I probably could have made it up to them. However, if we did catch them, then we had another arrow in the quiver, which is the possibility for me to win from a sprint. Or, you know, is this the second to last lap? We'll see if I do put in a little measly sprint at the end of this. No, I don't think this is the last. I think we still have... Or is this the sprint? No, this isn't the sprint, is it? No, I think we have another lap to go. Yeah, we have another lap to go. Wilson, you know, you just see the body language, puts his head down, he's like tired. Did a lot of work on the front for a long time. Okay, we have the belt. So sorry, this is the last lap. And now I've moved up the fourth wheel. In the draft, with the tailwind. How far is the group ahead? How hard are they going to work, these guys? You know, this is like a, prisoner's dilemma. How much work should I do? How much help should I give? How much should I sacrifice? These guys, you know, that aren't on each other's teams, that don't care about each other's interests, they care about their own interests. Can they somehow work together in a way that doesn't screw themselves over? That's the thing. That's the dilemma. Here we can see Wilson on the front again. Strong effort. You know, he was pulling on the last lap. He's not guttering the group, so going relatively easy related to the speed and the wind coming from the left to the right. RG pulls off a little bit. Eddie in the gutter again. But it's the last lap. Perhaps Eddie wants to bridge solo. And if he wants to bridge solo, he needs to attack and drop us. And now Wilson on the front again. So look, they're very close. Yes, that's what I was talking about. And I was telling Eddie, don't crash, you know. If I wheel, don't knock me off the road here. They're right there. They're right there. I could have gone. But that's not really to our advantage. There's the potential that I will bring up other people that could do some damage in the sprint. It might not be me that wins. I'm going to sit here and wait and let it play out. I was kind of not super motivated in this sprint, kind of meaning I was sort of like 85% in. Like, normally I would have sprinted way before I started. And let's see, do I actually hit a peak here? Okay, I'm starting to go up, hitting close to 1,000 watts, not quite. And I start to hear wheels behind me catching up and start to go a little harder. I may have hit my peak later. And Sam almost pipped me, but there were 10 people up the road ahead of me. I finished 11th, so out of the points by 1 place, but teammates ahead. Ryan ended up dropping up early because of the heat. We ended up getting 4th place, and at least one other place in the top 10. Adam being in the top 10 and me being 11th. So, you know, so essentially when you take out the 2 hitters, we got 2nd, which is a pretty good result, but Brent got 1st, Cadence Sprinter, which is not ideal. That's part of the game, so we're going to have to fight back against him next week, and he'll have the advantage of a little more points than us in terms of our sort of Cadence versus Jamie Meadows War battle, so stay tuned. Probably be a hot one again. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.